All right, welcome back to the Beast Game podcast. And today we're talking about a resurgence in horror, which is now Candyman. This one is a remake of a 90s classic, according to James. I think Tony Todd was in that movie, right?
Yeah.
He was Kern in Star Trek. Directed by Nia DaCosta, who has
hmm
done what?
I don't think she's really done.
She is directing the Marvels
She's
movie?
directing the Marvels, but I think this is probably her first feature. I think may have done
She
some
did
some
a
short films.
movie called The Little Woods, and then she did a short for the Candyman.
Okay.
And that Little Woods movie has Tessa Thompson in it. Oh god. This
Mm,
one stars Yahya Abdul Mateen, who is a very good actor, Tiana Paris, Nathan Stewart Jarrett, and this is also written in part by Jordan Peele, which is probably a reason why it has gotten some attention, and I think he has also produced it. But the synopsis is a sequel to the horror film. I thought there was already a sequel to Candyman.
well, see, there was a sequel,
All right.
but that sequel sucked ass. So this would be considered the sequel, actual canon sequel,
All
if that
right.
makes sense.
All right. So, a sequel to the horror film Candyman that
Mm,
returns to the now gentrified Chicago neighborhood. And I guess it was Cabrini Green,
yeah.
where the legend began. For him, snuff films aren't entertainment, but they are a way of life. Like,
Oh man.
Jay, who is the master of horror suspense and thriller,
Stupid, Joe.
how did
Go
you
ahead.
feel about Candyman 2021?
You know what? It's funny you mentioned the snuff film because I was watching Faces of Death probably like 2 days ago. How did people believe this shit was real? So Candyman 2021.
Written by Jordan Peele, by the way.
It was written by him and the
The director,
director. I
yeah,
think she
Nita
wrote it
Costa
too.
and somebody named Win
Yeah,
Rosenfeld.
yeah. I liked this movie, but I did not like this movie.
Okay.
And I'm going to explain. Okay, so let's compare this to the original Candyman that came out in 1992. That Candyman was like kind of like a boogeyman. No, you don't say his name, he'll come kill you no matter.
Don't
Like
say it,
you
don't
see,
speak it, don't.
oh God, yeah, like the Bye Bye Man shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't really say his name, and backstory was so unique. Like the character alone had a great backstory, and it was just tragic character. So this one, what they try to do is say it's more than one Candyman. It's like a hive, and these people that have become Candyman,
So Candyman, basically.
yeah, it's Candymen. They have been wronged or some type of injustice has happened to them, right?
I.e., racism, I probably assume.
Right. So I got that, but then the only thing I did not like is this movie was too woke, and it took away from the concept of Candyman. Instead of him being a spirit that kills, no motive, no nothing like that. You just speak his name, keep your name out of his mouth, or he gonna come get you.
If I
Basically, what?
say F Candyman,
Right. So
he
I
ain't gonna
mean,
do nothing to me.
that's basically the gist of Candyman.
Yeah.
He was coming back to strike fear in the hearts of whomever did that because of him being wrong. This Candyman, it seemed like it is an avenging angel for those that have been going through injustices.
I
And
really wish this trend in Hollywood would end. That level of
mhm,
stupidity is 2019
yeah,
type of movie where now we have to have sympathetic villains. They're not just bad.
there's a
Trauma.
reason behind why
Yeah.
they do what they do.
Yeah. This is,
They just cannot be evil. That's what makes shit scary.
mhm.
You're doing it for no motive. You're just doing it because you want to do it. It's fun to you, not because you're an avenging angel. He was the Black Batman. I am justice. That took away. So they wanted to keep the legend going because the son, Yahya Mateen's character, was the baby that was in part one. That was in a fire.
Okay. So
That was
it sounds
saved
like
by
20
Virginia
something.
Madison's character, huh?
So it sounds like 20 something at this point.
Probably mid 20s. I'm
Okay.
assuming because that was about what? No, that was about what? 30 years ago. It's about 30 years
So
ago.
how's
So yeah,
Yaya Abdul-Mateen in his 30s? Like,
yeah. So it has to be in his late 20s for that to add up. There was a creepy factor to it. It was shot beautifully. The movie could have done a lot better in my eyes. You bring it up once. Like the original Candyman, they did have hints of racism in there. They brought up how the original Candyman was a slave, fell in love with a white woman, person that hired him's daughter to
mhm.
do a painting, beat the hell out of him and cut his arm off and spread honey on his chest and the bees were they brought that up because it was about slavery and just racism. They mentioned it once,
Mm-hmm.
maybe twice throughout the whole movie. This was constantly being thrown in your face every 5 seconds.
Racism.
It was a little bit too much because they were talking about the gentrification of Cabrini Green, which, okay, yeah, you mentioned that once or twice. Fine. The artist, Anthony, that's his name, he would just throw like little subtle hints about, oh, how y'all do us and stuff like that. I'm like,
Message.
come on. Like, we understand it. We get it. Let's get to the movie. The reason why the Candyman was brought back was because he needed something to do. Like, he was uninspired. So I think someone told him a story about Candyman, and he decided to do a little bit of research. And then he went down a rabbit hole and found out more and more information. Then he happened to speak to a person that saw Candyman, well, another version of Candyman in Cabrini Green that wasn't the original version. It's like I said, it's a hive of them. It's a
Okay.
hive.
Okay. So, like
So
zombies.
that's what they call them. They call them a hive because of bees.
Okay.
It's more than one Candyman.
More than one.
So yeah, what were you about to say?
No, I just said, okay, follow along. This Candyman.
Yeah. So
You sound like a strip club.
it kind of does. Some of the kills were pretty good. Stuck with the Candyman trope that you can't really see him sometimes, only if it's in a mirror, and usually the person that he's going after is the only person that could see him.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty good. Like doing stuff with mirrors and horror movies is creepy if it's done right. And they did a pretty decent job. Like I said, the imagery was fine. The cinematography was great. I thought she did a very good job. Just the imagery was good. The story was lacking. Just kept pounding it in your fucking face. And that's one thing that I hate, not just with horror movies, just with movies alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because it should be organic. It should not be forced. If it's forced, you're insulting the audience. It's like we're not going to know that you're trying to force a message down our throats.
Well,
You know,
that's
just have it be organic.
a lot of filmmakers have gone wrong, editorializing instead of telling a story. I mean, again,
So
if I just have a slant on something, let's say I prefer almond milk to regular milk, and I
right.
somehow write that into a story. But go ahead, finish.
Yeah. If they just mentioned it maybe once or twice about this new Candyman and how he got screwed over, had injustice against him, and how he became the bee, they mentioned it once or twice, and then don't keep throwing out subtle hints about racism. We're all aware racism exists. We're all aware that it's here.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be outside of Candyman and Anthony being like the main characters and everybody else being side characters. Racism and being woke was another character in this movie, and that took away from the movie itself to me. When I watch it again, I will watch it again because I usually watch movies more than once just to see if I missed something, especially horror films. But it could have been so much better if they just let it flow organically instead of just pushing the message over and over again.
All right. So, what score would you give the Bye Bye Man?
Well, you never gonna let that down either. So,
and I assume they probably set this up for a sequel, right? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you what happens at the end.
I assume the Candyman doesn't die. Well, the Candyman don't die.
So, the guy that he got the information about Candyman, the one who told him the story about when he saw what happened to the newer Candyman and how he became the bee, he wanted to keep that myth, that thing going. Because Candyman was been kind of absent for a while. Steered Anthony, Yahya Mateen's character, down the rabbit hole. He manipulated little things, little subtle things. He was going to make him the next Candyman. Make him the urban legend of the hood.
Okay.
And be the avenging angel. That's basically what I'm saying that.
Avenge
okay.
Racism.
So he kidnapped him, but he was like in some type of trance. He got stung by a bee. And he basically cut his arm off, put a hook on, gave him the coat, everything. He was just out of it. I mean, he was under the trance of I don't know what, but he was just out of it. And then he called the cops. Cops came through, automatically saw him with a weapon and all that stuff, killed him.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying now?
Knew that had to be somewhere.
Killed him, and his girlfriend was there captive too because he had his girlfriend there. The guy that orchestrated all of this was going to have him kill his girlfriend, continue the legend, and then have the cops come in and shoot him. So it was spread throughout
wasn't
the hood.
That the same premise of that Saw movie? The end
Was Spiral?
Yeah.
I didn't see Spiral, so I don't know.
Yeah, so the end of the movie for Spiral, this is spoiler. The whole thing was to set up Samuel L. Jackson.
Because be new Jigsaw.
All right, so Chris Rock is Samuel L. Jackson's son. Chris Rock was working with another detective that eventually winds up dead. So it was like his partner for most of the movie, and then all of a sudden Jigsaw gets a hold of him and kills him. But what it turns out to be is that Samuel L. Jackson, in a couple of different ways, was a corrupt cop. That the partner of Chris Rock, his father was wronged by Samuel L. Jackson. He held a grudge against Samuel L. Jackson because his father was killed by the police, and Samuel L. Jackson, a couple of different ways, covered for the corrupt police. So he joined the police academy, went through all of police academy, became a regular beat cop, became a detective, all in order just to become Chris Rock's partner to kidnap Samuel L. Jackson. So that at the end of the movie, Samuel L. Jackson is strung up in this unnecessary contraption to hold a gun up as soon as the police come into the door, so Chris Rock can see them and know that it's his father holding the gun to the police so he can be shot by the police. That is the end of Spiral. And then, yeah. And then the dude that wound up getting Samuel Jackson killed just then has like this little speed ramping thing. Like, oh, yes, I'm the new Jigsaw. And then he bounces.
I'm glad I didn't see that shit then.
You can't be bad. You just have to have some injustice happening to you.
And that is the problem with horror movies nowadays. Horror is supposed to frighten you, make you feel uneasy. How are you going to feel uneasy or be frightened when you make the villain a sympathetic villain to the point they're not really a villain? They're somewhat of a tragic hero.
Well, it makes the movie weak. You really need to find roles, the protagonist and antagonist. But once you start making these wishy-washy antagonists, it makes the movie less than that, because all it is just a run of mill story, because we can't commit to a direction for a villain because they have to be so sad. They have to have a tragic happening. I'm like, it doesn't need to happen like that.
See, we're going off topic. We discussed this afterwards. Let me just get to the score. I'm about to go on a tangent. I'll give this movie a 6. It's a disappointing 6. I would have given the movie an 8 if they just didn't keep going on with the too woke for its own good. I understand being in the know, and I understand being aware of what's going on in the world. But there is also a limit to that shit. Sometimes you're so woke you still sleep, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Kind of falls into that category. I understand like you put it in there in the beginning, because every horror movie villain has some type of story to make them who they are. But once that story has been completed, once something happens to them to make them who they are, they're not that person anymore. They became something else, something that you don't know. And they do what they do because that's what they do, not because of trying to be like a hero or something like that. And maybe I'm like really, really digging into this movie's ass. Well, it's because I like Candyman. And
you like most horror movies.
Right. So, and Candyman, the only black horror movie villain.
What about Leprechauns?
What?
Leprechaun in the Hood, Joe.
Yeah,
That's like
yeah.
a horror movie.
Oh my God! Don't ever mention that shit again. But you see what I'm saying, though? It's just like you're doing this how things are in today's society, and they feel that they gotta always force a message into movies. And I understand forcing a message into movies subtly, just not
Mm-hmm.
like boom right there in your face. Not once, not twice, not three times. Maybe throughout the whole damn movie to the point you're like, man, all right, we get the message. Can you go on with the actual movie? And that was the case with Candyman. So I give it a 6. I want to give it an 8, but because of that, I got to give it a 6.
A lot of times, places are always trying to reach back to movies. I mean, you had that Child's Play movie, and I think sometimes with these, let's go back to the catalog and figure out what we have. A lot of these remakes, reimaginings of 80s horror, 90s horror, I guess in this case,
Mm-hmm.
a current generation does not have any affinity to these. Just saying we're going to come out with a Candyman movie doesn't make people go crazy because
No.
everything right now is comic book movies, which, I mean, again, that will die out at some point. But again, I keep going back to Charlie's Angels. Charlie's Angels, nobody cares about that.
And the demographic that you're looking for will be 50s and up.
Yeah, 50s, maybe 60s.
Right.
So a lot of times with these reimaginings, you're just doing it just because, again, you need content for streaming.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't badly written outside of the forcing of social issues. It was well shot. Imagery was good. The mood was fine. Like the tone, and I told you, atmosphere and tone is very important for a horror film. It had all of that. But like I said, just the social issues just in your face is kind of took away from the movie for me.
All right. Well, that is the Beast Game podcast. So again, don't see it, don't say it, don't speak it like whatever the Baba Man, the Candyman can, the Candyman can.
They actually had that song in there too. In the
Oh
very beginning.
no.
They did, Joe.
Why? Why? All right. Was Tony Todd in the movie?
They use his voice.
Okay. At least they had some common sense. But all right. Jordan Peele, not everything you do is successful. Peace Game Podcast.